World premieres are always the best because you get to create what that look is. One of the great things on this production was that early on, with opera, you have a longer gestation period for the design. Usually you're contracted a couple of years ahead of time. A year before the opera premiered, all the designers, composer, lyricist, director, we were all together in Dallas, and there was a workshop presented there. So we were all able to hear the music and come together with our thoughts about it. And that's where this whole seed developed. And with that, we knew that we wanted to get this whole world of the grayness or the whiteness that is the mountain. The scenic designer and I had met beforehand with the director and thrown out some ideas. So we knew what was happening a little bit, but that was the first time we all gathered together. And that's when it was decided that we would all have exactly the same color. Elaine McCarthy, Robert Brill, and I, the videographer and scenic designer, got together and we're looking at fabrics together, looking at different paint swatches together, and trying to figure out what that perfect color would be so that it could be projected upon, that it wouldn't be too bright for the lighting or anything like that.
One of the cool things about that is kind of how they would blend into the scenery, those mountain voices.
Right. And the reason that all came about was when I read the libretto the first time, it was that the voice of the mountain was singing. And we were trying to figure out what the voice of the mountain was. And I realized, well, of course, there are all those bodies up there of people that have gone and climbed the mountain. And I actually did, there's an easy little web page of listing all the people who have died up there. So I went through and just started going through all the people that had died and trying to take inspiration from that and trying to figure out when the big times were happening of the 20s, 40s, 50s, and then go back into figure out what mountaineering gear was at that time, and then make that what the costumes would be for those people. The way that the color worked in, we decided that the scenery and the people, the chorus costumes would all be the same color so that they would blend into the mountain at times and sometimes come forward depending on lighting and projection. Some of those examples would be, I think you can see this. This is a 1930s idea. The higher boots, leather boots, jodhpurs, and then these wool coats with fur collars. What was available for people to wear in the winter at that time period, and that's what they wore. And even this sort of hat, there was a lot of that I saw in the research, which I thought was very interesting, that it wasn't just knit caps, which were around at the time. We did some that were more 50s. And again, you can see that's based on clothing and winter clothing that was based in the 50s. Later on, coming into the 70s, then we have probably what more people understand as winter clothing now. And this is where some of the things we could start purchasing items and altering them to make them look correct.
The history, you're bringing all of those real life elements onto the stage.
Right. Well, I think that there's a lot of things that designers bring to a project, and some of them are not even realized consciously, but I think that an audience subconsciously can say, oh, wait, those aren't all the same thing. And I can see that there's more than there's history in that mountain. With the principal costumes, was fairly straightforward, it seemed. We were trying to get those characters a different color so that they could be tracked easily by the audience. And one of our performers who played Doug, Craig Firm, came in, and he's a climber actually. And he came in wearing this great Patagonia shell that was exactly the color I'd been looking for. And we were searching and searching to try to find a garment that was already this color. Craig brought that in and it was just perfect. So I said, Craig, please, can we wear that? And he was like, I would love to. It would be great. So we figured out a way to do an understructure on his jacket, an interior jacket that would actually make his jacket look like it was a more of a winter jacket, more that it was giving some cold protection to him as well. So that was great fun. And it's been used several times now. It's been so great to have Craig in the production several times. And then also there was one production that we did that Craig was very nice and let me borrow it for that production as well. The other thing that was interesting was that for their safety, while the singers were up in all these very dangerous, well, not very dangerous, but visually looking dangerous places, they were clipped in if they were over 6 feet above, and they could easily clip themselves in and unclip themselves. And of course, different performers had different reactions to being on a higher level. Of course, the director was dealing with that during rehearsals, and we were really lucky that Dallas Opera was able to provide a rehearsal set that was similar to what was going to be on stage, at least in height. Then they could understand, oh, I have to climb up to this, or I have to get down to the floor to do my next scene. With the chorus, trying to figure out where they were and how, that I didn't get a group of 1960s climbers all together, that I didn't have 1930, all those interesting garments over here. So in rehearsal, there was a time that I would come in and I would take photos of where the people were. And the assistant director and I would get together and make sure that I knew, because of course I don't know all of the performers' names at that time. We also had this computer generated sketch from the scenic designer that I was able to use and say, oh, they're standing here, standing there, which was very helpful when we were deciding who was in what costume. I'd already sketched all that out. It was just a matter of saying, well, performer number 1 is in this outfit, performer number 5 is in this one. When we were in dress rehearsal and had the costumes on stage, Elaine McCarthy, who did the projections videography, showed me an interesting trick of taking photographs of the people on stage, because, I mean, it's not that I didn't know to take photographs of people on stage, I do that all the time, but what I was looking at was trying to get the colors correct. And sometimes, because of the different fabrics, they would reflect lighting differently. So we had to go back in and color correct them. So a good way to do that was to take a photograph which flattens everything and flattens the color, so I could just read it as one thing and say, oh, this pair of trouser, we need to just take it down a shade of gray, or this sweater is reading a little darker than it should, and I need to throw some white into it. So that was a really fun ingredient to this specific opera.
Yeah, well, and speaking of world premieres, you will be designing the costumes for Diving Bell and the Butterfly this upcoming spring.
We are looking at that right now. The drawings, I've been doing the drawings the last several weeks, trying to get those ready and trying to get everything together. It's been very exciting. It's the same team as Everest. So that's great, because we do work well together. The director and designers for that have gotten together already, and we had a lovely Zoom call to try to figure out the look of what we're all going to bring to it. I know that there are some differences this time because of what's happening currently right now with coronavirus and what's been happening to, unfortunately, theater going, opera going this past season. So trying to figure all that out. Fortunately, the director has a good mind of understanding the impact of the virus and what's the impact that it's having on the structure of Dallas Opera, but also to understand how to get the project out, how to get the show on its feet and in a visual impact so that the audience is excited to come back to the theater and come back into a performance hall. And it's not just a concert, it's an opera.